For years, my wife Kathy and I lived in a whirlwind of constant activity. Work, house construction issues, and career ambitions kept us on edge, though we somehow found comfort in the chaos. Even our arguments, usually over small things like schedules or future plans, never really shook our relationship. I thought we were strong enough to handle anything life threw at us. But in hindsight, I now see the early signs of trouble. Small changes in behavior, unspoken tensions, and a growing emotional distance between us became more noticeable. Our conversations felt strained, our closeness less frequent, and I began to feel Kathy pulling away. I never imagined those minor issues would eventually lead to a painful revelation that would turn my world upside down. I woke suddenly, glancing at the clock, 2:30 a.m. My shirt was soaked with sweat, as it always was after that recurring dream. This time I hadn't spoken out loud. Kathy was still asleep beside me. The dream always played out the same, a distorted memory from 2 years ago. In it, I'd sit at my desk with a bottle of whiskey, an empty glass, and a weapon. I'd down the drink without tasting it, check the revolver's loaded cylinder, and mutter threats of revenge. Thankfully, these dreams were becoming less frequent now, occurring only once every couple of months. Despite how vivid they felt, the dream had little to do with what actually happened. Yes, there was a bottle of scotch, but I was passed out on the sofa, and there was no weapon involved. To understand how things got to this point, I need to go back several years. 2002 was a tough year. It began with Kathy and me arguing with city inspectors over the design of our new house. After several permit rejections, we finally got approval in August. But dealing with our contractor was another battle. Meanwhile, we were both busy with our careers. I was working at Independent Investigations Corporation, a company that investigates insurance fraud. I was 30 years old and the lead investigator, able to choose my cases and assign others. The job was lucrative, and by then I was starting to notice a few gray hairs creeping in. People called me confident, but I wasn't anything special. Just a guy with a crooked nose from an old college boxing match, standing at 6'2" and 185 kg. Kathy, at 29, was the most attractive woman I knew. With her long, dark brown hair and striking blue-green eyes, she was slim and athletic. She managed the accounting department at DCNH. Her company was doing well, and she'd been receiving nice bonuses. But early in 2002, there was a shakeup at her office when the Indianapolis manager was replaced by Greg Bartlett. That's when things started to change. Greg was about 5'5" inches, overweight, and mostly bald, with just a ring of hair around his head. Kathy thought he was a good manager, and when I met him, I found him likable enough. Around the same time Greg came to Indianapolis, DCNH brought in a vice president, Jack Hansen, from New York. Jack was about 45, in good shape, and seemed like the type who had a wandering eye. He struck me as the kind of guy who didn't let marriage stop him from pursuing women. Kathy, however, thought highly of him and constantly talked about his great ideas for boosting business. By summer, our house was finally on schedule, and things at DCNH had settled down. Kathy said business was improving, thanks to Hansen. We moved into our new home outside Indianapolis in August and loved it from the start. Jokingly, I told Kathy I wanted to make love in every room of the house. She took me by the hand and led me to the kitchen. "We'll start with the kitchen," she said. What followed was amazing sex. And although we didn't make it to the other rooms, we stayed close in the bedroom. Despite our busy schedules, still with work and settling into the new house, our moments were becoming limited to the bedroom at night. One night, I brought up starting a family. "I think it's time to get off the pill and have a baby," I said. "I want to wait," Kathy replied. "Jack suggested I hold off until next year since I'm in line for a promotion." "Jack?" I asked, a little irritated. "Yeah, Jack Hansen. He thought it'd be smarter to wait until after the promotion." "Why are you talking to him about our family plans?" I asked, annoyed. Kathy explained that he'd asked if we were planning kids, and she mentioned our timeline, prompting his suggestion to delay. Although I wasn't thrilled, I agreed to wait. By the end of the year, we were both swamped with work and not spending much time together. Weekends were supposed to be our time, but even those were getting eaten up by work. Kathy's department was busy trying to land a big merger, and I was juggling multiple investigations. On the last weekend of November, we finally had some time off together. We did our Christmas shopping, and over dinner, Kathy shared some good news. We're about to close a merger with National Pharmaceutical by December 20th, which means I should get my promotion. That's great, I said, excited for her. Then we can start trying for a baby. Not yet, she said. I'm still on the pill, and I want to settle into my new job before going on maternity leave. I understood, but I was still a bit disappointed. Trying to lighten the mood, I joked, should I buy stock in National Pharmaceutical? Absolutely not, she laughed. That's insider trading and we'd go to jail. I'm kidding, I said. I'd never do anything to jeopardize our future. The escalating risk, she quietly admitted, was making her uneasy, especially given their proximity to sealing the deal. Any misstep could jeopardize the approaching holiday season and IIC's annual Christmas party scheduled for December 6th. With an attendance of around 43 guests, including employees and their partners, the event promised to be a more subdued affair, featuring drinks, hors d'oeuvres, dinner, and music. Given the infrequent interactions among field investigators, the gathering allowed for relaxed networking. Seated with my close companion, Bill Ripley, and his wife Susan, Kathy and I reveled in the lighthearted atmosphere, lingering until midnight before departing. Upon arriving home, I tenderly kissed Kathy, and our passion ignited swiftly. She surprised me with novel and provocative behaviors that left me astounded and ultimately satisfied. As she retreated to the bathroom, she playfully suggested continuing our escapades in other areas of the house. The following day, a shift occurred. After working half the day, I returned home to find Kathy gazing pensively out the window. Her demeanor indicated distress, and initially, she remained unresponsive. Respecting her need for space, I deferred my inquiries until after dinner. With dinner prepared by Kathy and the cleanup completed by me, I joined her in the family room and gently inquired, "Kathy, what troubles you? May I assist?" She finally confided that complications were arising with the pharmaceutical contract negotiations. The company's president, Mr. Benson, was making excessive demands, threatening the deal's closure. Kathy feared the potential consequences of failure, including her job security. Despite my attempts to alleviate her concerns, she remained adamant that the onus for resolving the situation rested solely upon her shoulders. However, confidentiality constraints prevented her from divulging further details. Our conversation concluded with her firm assertion that she needed to handle the matter independently. Kathy's aloofness intensified the following day, and she left for work early on Monday, citing crucial meetings. As I disposed of the trash, something caught my eye as I emptied the bathroom wastebasket. After a brief search, I abandoned the pursuit and proceeded with my day. Upon re-entering the house, I scanned the kitchen for the elusive object that had slipped from my grasp, but to no avail. My shower and preparations for work ensued. By Monday evening, Kathy's disposition had not improved, prompting me to inquire, "Has the workplace situation eased at all?" "I'm not at liberty to discuss it," she replied, her stress evident. "But I'll manage." Wednesday brought a glimmer of hope. Kathy greeted me with a kiss and uttered words of love, a sentiment she had not expressed since Friday. While not fully herself, the distant expression had vanished. "Can you share any insights now?" I cautiously ventured. "I'm not supposed to divulge details," she said. "But we found a way to appease Mr. Benson. Jack seems optimistic that all will be well." Her tone suggested some relief, but tension lingered. That night in bed, Kathy requested my embrace but declined intimacy. The strain of her work was palpable. As she drifted to sleep, I lay restless for 20 minutes before seeking solace in a drink in the kitchen. I noticed Kathy's briefcase sitting unattended on a chair. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it, discovering its contents were largely incomprehensible. However, her day planner caught my attention. Kathy had scheduled various meetings with Bartlett and Hanson, along with one with Mr. Benson. Her profession in accounting puzzled me, as she would not ordinarily interact with clients. The planner also contained a peculiar numerical sequence from December 6th to December 20th, with the 20th circled. I remained uncertain whether this was related to the Christmas party or the contract signing, but the prominence of the 20th was unmistakable. Returning the day planner and briefcase to their respective places, I observed an improvement in Kathy's mood over the following days. Nonetheless, a sense of distance persisted. Employing my investigative skills, I deduced that December 20th held great significance. If Mr. Benson was to sign the contract with DCN, it would likely occur on that date. On Friday, December 13th, I concluded one of my ongoing cases and made significant progress on another. That evening, I met Bill Ripley for a celebratory beer. Amidst our conversation, I discreetly mentioned the mystery surrounding Kathy's day planner, omitting any personal connection. I described the numbered days leading to the 20th, which was emphasized by a circle and underline. Bill's immediate response was to suggest consulting Mary Frell, a female investigator with a keen eye for detail. I acknowledged his wisdom, realizing the value of a woman's perspective. We dropped the topic, and later, Bill jokingly proposed that I consider him for a partnership in the event I ever established my own agency. We shared a laugh, and I assured him he would be my first call in such a scenario. Frustration ensued over the weekend. Despite Kathy's affectionate gestures, intimacy remained elusive, causing me both physical and emotional discomfort. On Monday morning, I expressed my concerns to her. "I'll probably be working late all week to wrap up my cases," I informed Kathy. "You can't work late Friday," she declared. "You must be home by 7 o'clock to prepare for the party." I acquiesced, but as the week progressed, frustration crept in, escalating into anger. On Tuesday, I completed my second case, and we celebrated with dinner. However, afterward, Kathy complained of feeling unwell, and once again, intimacy eluded us. The same scenario unfolded Wednesday evening, and my composure was fraying. While cognizant of her stress, my patience was wearing thin. I convinced myself that once the pharmaceutical deal was finalized on Friday, everything would improve, and normalcy would be restored. On Thursday, I was close to closing my final case and informed Kathy that I might have difficulty returning home by 7 p.m. "You made a promise," she protested. "I know, and I apologize, but I'm so close to concluding this," I explained, attempting to pacify her. I suggested that she attend the party without me if I were delayed, and I would join her by 9 o'clock. She reluctantly agreed but expressed reluctance to go alone. Friday morning brought a breakthrough in my case. I had been diligently pursuing the recovery of stolen jewelry, valued at over $1 million. The thief had proposed selling the jewelry back for $250,000, saving the insurance company $750,000. After gaining the thief's trust, I arranged a meeting to facilitate the exchange. After finalizing the meeting, I proceeded to the insurance company to secure the funds for the exchange. The paperwork for such a substantial sum required time to process, but I had already identified and followed the thief to a coffee shop. On Friday morning, I contacted him to arrange the afternoon exchange and subsequently trailed him to an abandoned garage. He opened the trunk of a car but departed without retrieving anything. After surveying his surroundings, he drove away. Once he was out of sight, I used a tire iron to break the padlock, revealing the stolen jewelry concealed within a canvas bag in the trunk. I left a note stating, "Better luck next time," secured the garage, and returned to my office. I alerted the insurance company to arrange collection of the jewels. A sense of accomplishment washed over me, knowing I had prevented the thief from profiting, saved the insurance company a significant sum, and assisted in the recovery of the owner's property. Subsequently, I encountered Mary Frell, a fellow investigator, and extended an invitation to lunch, hoping to gain her perspective on the notations in Kathy's day planner. Over pastrami sandwiches, I described the numbered days leading up to the 20th. Mary pondered for a moment before a smile spread across her face. She suggested that the numbers were likely tracking Kathy's menstrual cycle, with the 20th representing her most fertile day. I was stunned. The idea had never occurred to me. Kathy was not scheduled to discontinue birth control until February, so why would she be monitoring her cycle now? Could she be doing so for someone else? The thought unsettled me. Drawing upon my experience, I knew better than to draw conclusions without all the facts, so I resolved to be patient. By 5 p.m., I had concluded my work, feeling satisfied with closing 3 cases and gaining insight into Kathy's planner. I headed home, intending to escort Kathy to the party in the hope of alleviating some of her stress. I arrived home at 5:30 p.m., parking in the driveway. Anticipating our imminent departure, I retrieved the mail and proceeded toward the front door. I had not inspected the garage, so I was unaware of Kathy's presence. As I reached for the doorknob, I noticed the hall light illuminated. Peering through the small window, I witnessed Kathy descending the stairs unclothed, clutching a towel and a can of shaving cream. I recoiled from the window, not wishing to startle her. She entered the living room and paused near a chair, appearing momentarily disoriented. I found myself unable to avert my gaze. She exuded a stunning aura. However, I realized the need to move before she detected my presence. I decided to enter through the garage to announce my arrival. Reluctantly, I pulled myself away, entered my car, and opened the garage door. After parking and allowing the door to close, I entered the house and called out, "Kathy, I'm home!" I thought I detected a door closing upstairs. Upon reaching our bedroom, I called out again. Kathy responded, "You're home early. I'm preparing in the bathroom." "Why don't you use the guest bathroom?" she suggested, her tone indicating suspicion. I disregarded her suggestion and opened the door. Kathy was seated on the bathtub, attempting to cover herself as she prepared to shave. "This was supposed to be a surprise," she declared, forcing a smile. "For whom?" I inquired sharply. "For you," she swiftly replied. "I thought it would surprise you after the party." I pressed her further, pointing out that I had never expressed a desire for her to shave. "Where did you get that idea?" Kathy stammered, claiming that she believed it would be something unconventional, that many women were doing it, and she thought I might enjoy it. "We should have discussed it first," I said, irritated. She softly countered, "It's my body, and if I want to shave it, I can. If we don't like it, it will grow back." While she had a valid point, I wasn't ready to concede. "Don't shave it now," I stated firmly. "We'll talk about it later, and if you truly want to, you can do it tomorrow." Kathy's expression conveyed not only anger but also fear, which perplexed me. I understood her frustration but couldn't comprehend the fear. "I'm ready to do it now, so why should I wait?" she defiantly questioned. "Because your husband is asking you to wait," I replied, meeting her gaze. "I don't like bald kitties. Why does this need to happen now?" "It's my hair and I'll shave it if I want to," she retorted. Frustration mounting, I said, "Go ahead then, but if you do, you're going to the party alone." Kathy was visibly shocked. "What? Why are you being so unfair?" "It's just something I want to do. I don't think you're being honest about why you want to shave," I asserted. "You know I like your hair, so you weren't thinking of me. If you can't tell me the truth, we won't talk about it anymore. Shave it and go alone, or leave it and we'll go together. It's your choice." Kathy glared at me, put down the razor, and stepped into the shower. Afterward, I showered too, then lounged in my bathrobe while she prepared in silence. I could sense her anger and didn't want to provoke her further, so I watched quietly as she dressed, slipping into sheer black thigh-high stockings and a revealing cocktail dress. I couldn't help but notice how alluring she looked, but I wondered if she was dressing for me or for someone else. At 7:30, I inquired if she was ready to go. "Yes," she replied coldly. "You look incredibly attractive," I said, attempting to lighten the mood. "You're going to make someone's heart melt tonight. Yours, I hope," she said over her shoulder as she walked out, leaving me to ponder whether she intended to melt my heart or break it. During the drive, we remained silent for the first 15 minutes before Kathy apologized. "I'm sorry about the shaving thing. I was just nervous about tonight and snapped." "No problem," I replied. "Let's focus on having fun tonight." The party was held at the company's offices. Shortly after our arrival, Hansen approached, pulled Kathy aside, and engaged in a conversation. I observed them closely, trying to decipher their interaction. It initially appeared tense, but then Hansen smiled, and Kathy reluctantly nodded. Upon her return, I inquired, "What did he want?" "The national pharmaceutical deal is closing tonight. I have a meeting at 10 Hunk with Jack and Mr. Bartlett. If it goes well, we'll secure the contract and you'll get your promotion," I asked, feigning enthusiasm. "Yes, if everything goes as planned," she said, but without much excitement. Kathy didn't seem as overjoyed as she should have been. I attempted to gauge her mood further. "Then we can start trying for a baby." "Yes, we can start our family," she replied flatly. I wanted to shake her and demand an explanation. I sensed something deeper was amiss and knew I had to find a way to address it. As we entered the party, Kathy interlaced her arm through mine and leaned close. The room was tastefully decorated, with tables along the perimeter, a live band providing music, a dance floor, and an open bar with a buffet. I scanned the room, recognizing most of the faces. It didn't take long to spot him. A man standing near the bar, around 35 years old, 6 feet tall, athletic, clad in a dark blue Armani suit. I discreetly pointed him out to Kathy. "Who's that man by the bar?" I asked. "I don't know," she replied too casually, her body language rigid. I could tell she wasn't being truthful. "Let's go get a drink," I suggested. "I need to greet my colleagues." "Why don't you get us drinks?" she said, avoiding eye contact. I proceeded to the bar, ordered her a red wine, and procured a beer for myself. Then I approached the man in the suit. "Mr. Benson, how are you this evening?" I inquired. He appeared surprised. "How do you know me?" "It's my job," I replied. "I need to deliver this wine to my wife, but I'd like to speak with you afterward." He seemed uneasy but agreed. I handed Kathy her drink and informed her I would return after socializing with my colleagues. She appeared worried but didn't object. Once she was out of sight, I returned to Benson. "I work in security for DCN," I lied, "just ensuring that everything runs smoothly." "Hansen has some fun plans, right?" "That's what I've heard," Benson smirked. "Just waiting for things to commence around 1000. I asked, observing his reaction. "You seem to know quite a bit." "Like I said, it's my job," I replied. "I take it you prefer brunettes?" I added with a suggestive grin. "Love brunettes," he replied, relaxing, "especially with long hair." I pressed further. "Specifically." He grinned. "Like Mrs. Alpin." "Right, just like her." I felt nauseous as he chuckled. I suppressed my anger. "You probably like them without any hair down there, huh?" "Bald is nice." He laughed again. That was sufficient. I had obtained the information I needed. I must check on my colleagues. "If you need anything, find me," I said, walking away while muttering under my breath. Upon returning to the other side of the room, I noticed a man asking Kathy to dance. She declined politely and swiftly pulled me onto the dance floor. As we danced, I kept an eye on Benson, ensuring he didn't realize I was Kathy's husband. It was 9:30, and my stomach was churning as I pieced together the final pieces of the puzzle. As the song ended, I headed back to our table, but Kathy pulled me back onto the dance floor as the band began playing a slow song. She held me tighter than usual, almost uncomfortably so. I noticed Benson watching us, looking uneasy. I smiled and gave him a thumbs up, then tried to ignore him. I wondered if dancing with Kathy made him suspicious about my true identity, but by that point I didn't care. After the dance, we returned to the table. As I sat down, Greg Bartlett approached, handed Kathy a small package, and whispered something to her before leaving. Kathy concealed the package behind her back and informed me she was going to the restroom. I gazed at her and felt a wave of nausea. "Don't do it," I said firmly. "Don't do what?" she asked, feigning ignorance. "You know what I mean," I replied, grabbing her arm and locking eyes with her. "I'm not stupid. Stop it now." Kathy pulled away, insisting she was merely going to the bathroom, and walked off without looking back. While she was gone, I pieced together everything I had observed. It commenced when Kathy began referring to Hansen as Jack, followed by her sudden depression and insistence that the national pharmaceutical deal was in jeopardy because of her, although she claimed no wrongdoing. The numerous meetings with Bartlett, Hansen, and Benson raised red flags, especially when combined with Mr. Benson's bizarre comments. I realized that Kathy was having an affair with Greg Bartlett and was likely planning to leave me. The national pharmaceutical deal was her bargaining chip, and she intended to use it to secure her future with him. The strange numbering in her day planner indicated the days leading up to her most fertile period, when she would have the best chance of conceiving a child with Bartlett. I was consumed by rage and disbelief. I wanted to confront Kathy and expose her affair, but I knew I couldn't do it here. I needed to handle the discrepancies in Kathy's menstrual cycle tracking, especially given her birth control use, combined with the shaving argument, felt off. But what truly disturbed me was witnessing Kathy unclothed in the living room earlier, with Hansen's hand on her. I saw him touch and kiss her. I didn't intervene immediately. Instead, I opened the garage door, allowing them a moment to compose themselves, and Hansen to slip away unseen. I suspected Benson had required Kathy to shave for him as part of some arrangement with Hansen and Bartlett, who seemed complicit. I assumed the package Bartlett gave her held shaving supplies, and she was now in the restroom preparing for Benson. It was 9:45, and Kathy hadn't returned. My anxiety was growing, time was running short, and I lacked a concrete plan. I resolved to find Kathy and pull her out of the building, regardless of the fallout. As I moved towards the door, the band announced a break, and an idea sparked. Benson, Bartlett, and Hansen were standing together near the bar, the perfect captive audience. I approached the band and requested the microphone from the lead singer, explaining I had an announcement. He readily agreed. I paused, collecting my thoughts before activating the mic. "May I have everyone's attention, please?" The room gradually fell silent, and I saw Kathy returning from the restroom. Benson, Bartlett, and Hansen watched me intently. I just wanted to share some news about my wonderful wife Kathy on this special occasion, I continued, glancing at Kathy, who was now approaching, a look of apprehension on her face. First, some wonderful news. Kathy and I are expecting a baby, I declared. The crowd applauded as Kathy covered her face, likely feigning embarrassment for those unaware of the real situation. Hansen looked enraged, Bartlett perplexed, and Benson's expression was unreadable. And more good news. Kathy is receiving a promotion tonight for her contributions to the national pharmaceutical deal. I believe she's meeting upstairs with Mr. Bartlett, Mr. Hansen, and Mr. Benson to finalize the contract. How exciting is that? Further applause erupted, but Kathy softly pleaded, "Oh God, please stop," and sank to the floor, visibly distressed. I continued, "When I arrived home tonight, I discovered my wife in the bathroom preparing to shave, and I'm not referring to her legs." Uncomfortable laughter rippled through the now hushed room. Kathy lay on the floor, sobbing, as onlookers stared in disbelief. Benson had vanished. Hansen's face was crimson with fury, and Bartlett advanced toward me, clearly intending to silence me. Kathy was shaving because she was meant to be a gift for Mr. Benson tonight. He wanted her hairless, I revealed. The crowd was stunned. Bartlett reached for the mic, but I pulled it back, warning, "Try that again and I'll knock you out." I turned the mic back on. One last thing for Bartlett and Hansen. I'll be suing this company for what you've done to my marriage. I'm confident I'll prevail, and your terminations will be part of the settlement. Good night, everyone. Enjoy the remainder of your party. Silence descended as I placed the microphone down and went to Kathy, who was still weeping on the floor. "Kathy," I whispered. She looked up at me. "Fred, I'm so—" "Kathy, don't say anything," I interrupted. "Do you think you'll still get that promotion?" I rose and surveyed the room. People stared, then quickly averted their gaze when I glanced back. I gave Kathy one last look and departed. As I crossed the lobby, Hansen intercepted me. "Do you know what you've done?" he demanded. "Yes," I replied. "I screwed you and DCNH before you could finish screwing my wife. I hope it cost you millions, not just a few $100,000. "You'll pay for this," Hansen snarled. "I think you will," I countered. "I'll be speaking with the SEC about your business practices." As I turned to go, Hansen grabbed my arm. "I'm not done with you," he threatened. I shrugged him off. "Touch me again, and you won't be walking out of here," I cautioned. I heard him muttering as I left. Back home, I grabbed some scotch and started drinking. While pouring my second glass, I spotted something blue in a potted plant. It was the blue plastic case that had fallen out of the wastebasket earlier in the week. Inside, it was intact, nothing missing. I placed it on the table and continued drinking until I passed out on the sofa. I awoke around 9:00 a.m. Saturday with a throbbing headache and a foul taste in my mouth. After coffee and breakfast, I showered. There was no sign of Kathy, and I didn't anticipate her return. She was likely either frightened to confront me or furious that I'd disrupted her plans at DCNH. I wasn't sure if I cared. Sitting on the sofa, I contemplated my next move. It was painful to acknowledge how deeply I had loved Kathy and how she could betray us so completely. I doubted I could ever forgive her, but I knew I owed her the opportunity to explain if she desired to. However, I wouldn't pursue her for an explanation. If she didn't feel the need to offer one, I didn't need to hear it. I wondered where she had spent the night and what her future held. I felt a pang of guilt for leaving her at the party. I should have taken her home, but my hurt and anger had consumed me. At 11:00, the phone rang. Assuming it was Kathy, I hesitated before answering on the 6th ring. "Mr. Alpin?" a voice inquired. "Yes," I replied. "This is Special Agent Mark Walker with the FBI. Is your wife with you?" "No, she's not," I answered, surprised the FBI wanted to speak with her. "Actually, I need to speak with you," he said. "Me? What about?" I asked, confused. "I'd prefer to discuss it in person. Can you come to my office this afternoon?" I agreed and got directions to meet him at 2 p.m. After the call, I puzzled over why the FBI wanted to see me. It might be related to a recent case, but I couldn't grasp why he wouldn't explain over the phone. I'd interacted with law enforcement often for work, and it never fazed me. Yet this FBI meeting made me uneasy. At 1 p.m., I put on jeans and a sweater, drove downtown, and parked across from the Indianapolis FBI office. I told the receptionist I was there to see Special Agent Walker. "Have a seat," she said. Within 2 minutes, Walker emerged. Unlike the expensive suit from the previous night, he wore blue Dockers and a casual shirt. "Mr. Alpin, thanks for coming," he said. "Follow me." We went into a conference room where he offered me coffee. After pouring 2 cups, he sat down. "Should I call you Special Agent Walker or Mr. Benson?" I asked. "Mark is fine," he replied. "And may I call you Fred?" "Fred's fine," I agreed. "You must be confused right now," Mark said. "Yes, but I'm starting to put the pieces together. You were undercover as Mr. Benson, right?" "That's right," he confirmed. "I trust you'll keep our discussion confidential." "I understand confidentiality," I said, still unsure of his role. "I'm hoping you can explain how my wife got mixed up in this. I'll tell you what I can without compromising our investigation," Mark said. "But I understand you're angry. This has probably put a strain on your marriage." I nodded, frustrated. "This mess has likely ended it." "Things might not be as bad as you think," Mark continued. "Let me fill you in." He explained that earlier in the year, the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, contacted the FBI with troubling information about DCNH's business practices. "We started investigating and decided undercover work was necessary," he said, pacing. National Pharmaceutical was discussing a merger with DCNH. Mr. Benson, National's president, raised concerns about DCNH's tactics. Since nobody at DCNH had met Benson, I assumed his identity and began negotiating. "So you pretended to be Benson?" I asked. "Exactly," Mark confirmed. I led Hansen and Bartlett to believe I was interested but hesitant. I made them think I might back out, making them desperate. "But why involve my wife?" I asked, a knot forming in my stomach. "That's not quite what happened," Mark explained. "When I first met Bartlett and Hansen at DCNH, I was introduced to your wife. I told Hansen I wanted to speak with her about the finances of the company they wanted to merge with." "Why?" I asked, bracing myself. "Because your wife was the whistleblower. She contacted the SEC with concerns about DCNH's unethical practices." I was stunned. "Kathy blew the whistle?" "Yes, but she didn't know I was FBI," Mark said. "Her information implicated not just Bartlett and Hansen, but others, including the company president. I couldn't fully trust her, so she didn't know you were playing Benson." I asked, trying to understand. "Was she actually going to sleep with you at the party?" "I don't think so," Mark replied, shaking his head. "But I can't be sure." When I hinted at withdrawing from the deal, Hansen asked what it would take to secure the contract. That's when he made the suggestion. My fist clenched. "He offered my wife?" Mark nodded. He said, "I noticed you think Kathy Alpin is pretty attractive. How'd you like to get in on that?" I was shocked. I expected a bribe, but he offered your wife. I played along to see how far they'd go. I told him I might be interested, but I didn't commit. "That son of a witch," I muttered, anger rising. "Exactly," Mark said. The more Hansen talked, the more excited he became. I felt like he wanted me to accept for reasons beyond closing the deal. He even suggested I meet your wife at the company Christmas party. I started to feel sick. "So, were you going to go through with it?" "No," Mark quickly replied. "I had no intention of sleeping with your wife. First, it would have been unethical. Second, I suspected cameras and microphones in the room. This wasn't just a sexual favor to get me to sign. They planned to use it to blackmail me." "How were you planning to get out of it?" I asked, genuinely curious. "I was going to back out at the last minute," Mark explained. "I'd say the timing wasn't right and suggest Mrs. Alpin meet me in my hotel room later. Once alone, I'd reveal my true identity and bring her in for questioning. The plan was to arrest Bartlett and Hansen today. We thought we had enough evidence." I sat back, feeling a mix of relief and anger. "But I ruined everything with my little speech, didn't I?" "Actually," Mark said, smiling slightly, "you didn't. You saved me from the meeting with Hansen. Last night I left with my cover intact and continued investigating. This morning, Hansen bribed me with a significant sum to sign the contract. I told him I'd meet him Monday morning when he pays me. We'll apprehend him then, and DC's operations will be suspended while we review every transaction from the past 3 years. I'm still trying to grasp it all. I still don't understand what Kathy's role is." Your wife was doing the right thing by reporting the company, Mark explained, but I believe Hansen was coercing her. He may have blackmailed her. Did Hansen ever mention a condom? I inquired, feeling sick to my stomach. Yes, Mark said. Hansen claimed your wife insisted on using one. He joked that we wouldn't want her to get pregnant, would we? I sighed and leaned back in my chair. I need to find Kathy. I need to hear her side. She wasn't entirely innocent, but there were mitigating factors. That's all I can say for now, Mark said. Any more inquiries? Not right now? Excellent. Remember, do not discuss the investigation yet. I recommend withholding information from your wife until we indict Bartlett and Hansen, which should happen within the next few days. We'll need to question her then. I agreed to remain silent about the investigation. Mark said he'd call me once I could speak to Kathy about the FBI sting. He also mentioned that they'd likely need my testimony. After shaking hands, I exited the building. When I arrived home, I discovered a message from Kathy requesting a phone call. I dialed the number she had left for me and was greeted by a woman who inquired about my identity. Inform her that it's her husband, I said. When Kathy answered, she sounded apprehensive. Where have you been? She inquired. I've been calling you all day. Not all day, I said. I was home until 1 o'clock. Oh, I believe that's when I began calling. I wasn't going to make it simple for her. She needed to show that she was prepared to talk, so I remained silent. Fred, can I come home? She inquired. This is where you reside, correct? You should be here now. I'll be there in an hour, I said before hanging up. It was already 5 p.m. I decided to prepare dinner so it would be ready upon her arrival so we could talk afterward. I began cooking and then proceeded upstairs to prepare for the impending conversation. When I returned downstairs, I pocketed the blue case from the coffee table. I prepared spaghetti and meatballs with salad and opened a bottle of wine. Kathy entered at 6:05 p.m. and dinner was ready. Some of the tension seemed to ease from her face when she saw the meal and wine. She realized things might not be as dire as she had initially feared. We ate in silence before I inquired, "Where did you spend the night?" "A friend took me home after you left." I couldn't resist a dig. "Oh, you didn't stay for the remainder of the party. Your speech essentially ended it." "I suppose I owe some people apologies for that," she said. "But not you, and certainly not Bartlett or Hansen." "Correct," I said. "I owe you the apology." She was about to continue, but I stopped her. "We'll talk after dinner," I said, and we both fell silent once more. There wasn't much else to say after dinner. Kathy began loading the dishwasher, but I stopped her. "You can clean up later. We need to talk now," I said. We retreated to the family room and sat facing each other. "Do you want to tell me everything, or should I begin asking questions?" "In either case, I expect the truth," I said. "I'll tell you everything," she said. "I'm sure you know when it began. The day following your Christmas party, Jack phoned me. He stated that there was a significant issue with a major contract with National Pharmaceutical, and Mr. Benson refused to sign unless I slept with him. I was furious. I couldn't believe Jack would even ask me something like that. However, he emphasized the deal's significance for the company and promised substantial rewards if I agreed, such as a large sum of money and a promotion. I didn't want to do it, but Jack persisted, claiming that many people were relying on me. I claimed that I needed time to consider the offer. I was so stressed and perplexed that I couldn't think clearly. When you returned home, I knew I couldn't go through with it. Jack and Mr. Bartlett continued pressuring me all day Monday to persuade me to agree. Mr. Hansen informed me that if the deal fell through, it would be my fault and I would be fired. They also threatened to dismiss me if I told anyone about it. I tried to reveal as much as possible to you, but I knew that if you learned the entire story, you would act rashly, and I would lose my job. Tuesday, I told them I wouldn't do it. They urged me to reconsider, and Mr. Hansen then informed me that the company had lost over $100,000 and that if an audit were conducted, it would appear as though I had been embezzling for years. Jack warned me that I would face jail time if I did not comply with their demands. He stated that if I cooperated, I would receive the money and promotion, but if not, an audit would be conducted and I would be charged with embezzlement. Ultimately, I felt I had no choice but to agree. Jack and Mr. Bartlett checked in with me daily to ensure I didn't withdraw. They repeatedly assured me that I was making the right decision and that you would comprehend if you knew how critical the deal was. Kathy continued. I had been quiet up until this point, but now I was enraged. You can't possibly believe that I would have been all right with this, I said. You should have informed me of everything. I would have discovered a way out for you." "I realize that," Kathy said, her voice trembling. "Once I decided to go through with it, I felt somewhat better, but I was tormented by guilt about what I was doing to you. You must comprehend that I was terrified of being imprisoned. I had to take the chance. And then I requested that my patient shave their pubic hair before the party. Jack summoned me to his office on Friday. He informed me that Mr. Benson wanted me to shave all my pubic hair before the party. I informed him that I would not do that, but he claimed it would be a deal breaker if I didn't. Mr. Benson would withdraw from the deal. Jack instructed me to shave before the party and to avoid letting you notice until later. If you became angry, I was simply supposed to apologize and say I would grow it back. The issue was that you returned home earlier than anticipated and discovered me preparing to shave. So was I correct? Did you subsequently shave in the ladies' room at the party? I inquired, narrowing my eyes. Kathy gazed down at her hands. Yes, she whispered. Mr. Bartlett dispatched someone to the store for a razor and shaving cream, and I shaved in the ladies' room. When I returned to the party, I observed you with the microphone, attempting to attract everyone's attention. I was terrified. I had no idea what you were planning to do, and I was unsure how to prevent you. When you stated that I was pregnant, I couldn't believe it. I did not state that you were pregnant. I said we were going to have a baby, I corrected her. You were not yet pregnant, but that was our plan, wasn't it? Well, yes, she stammered, but what? I demanded. Are we, or are we not planning to start a family? Yes, we are, she said softly. I'll discontinue taking my birth control tablets tomorrow, and then we can begin. One more question, I said, suppressing a torrent of emotions. Did you inform Benson that he must use a condom? Jack stated that he would guarantee Benson's use of one, she replied. I'm relieved he did since I was not thinking clearly due to the stress. In any case, your speech effectively ended my career at DCNH and likely jeopardized the agreement with National Pharmaceutical, she said bitterly. So allow me to clarify. Bartlett and Hansen blackmailed you into agreeing to sleep with Benson in order to seal a transaction. They also insisted that you comply with his demand to shave. I then ruined everything by catching you in the act. Even after I instructed you not to, you shaved anyway. Ultimately, the sole reason you did not sleep with Benson was because I ruined it with my speech. Is that a fair summary? Yes, she whispered. But I do not hold you responsible. I understand why you acted as you did, and I have no right to be upset. Oh, good, I said sarcastically. So you absolve me for attempting to prevent my wife from sleeping with another man? That is not what I intended, Kathy said quickly. I acknowledge that you had every right to react as you did, and I have no right to be upset. I am disappointed in myself. I should have disclosed everything to you from the outset. Do you believe you will ever be able to forgive me? She asked, her voice trembling. That depends, I said, feeling the weight of it all. Is that everything? Have you disclosed everything pertinent? Yes, I have told you everything, she said, tears welling up in her eyes. I adore you, and the prospect of losing you due to this predicament is unbearable. Well, things do not appear as dire as they did initially, I said, noticing a faint smile forming on her face. However, I have a few more questions before we can move past this. What questions? She inquired, her voice hopeful. I reached into my pocket, retrieved the blue case, and tossed it onto the coffee table. I discovered this in the trash last week, and it's empty. You discarded all of your birth control tablets, but withheld that information from me. You led me to believe you were still taking them. Just 5 minutes ago, you stated that you would cease taking them tomorrow. Can you explain that? Kathy appeared as though I had slapped her. She opened and closed her mouth several times before finally speaking. You are correct. I ceased taking my tablets, she admitted. I intended to surprise you by becoming pregnant. I am aware of your desire to start a family, and I believed it would be a delightful surprise. That would have succeeded only if we had been intimate, I said coldly. However, the last time we were intimate was the day before you ceased taking them. I was simply so distressed by what Mr. Bartlett and Jack demanded of me that I was not in the mood for intimacy, Kathy hastily replied. Were you unaware that last night was the most fertile night of your cycle? I asked, catching her off guard. No, I was unaware of that, she stammered. I had too many other concerns on my mind. Curiously, I continued, you intended to sleep with Benson last night despite being in the middle of your cycle and did not insist on a condom, but Jack did. What are you implying? She inquired, panic rising in her voice. That I was aware of my fertility and was willing to risk pregnancy, I replied. I would never do that. I could tell that Kathy was rattled and I was weary of the charade. It was time to put an end to it. One more question, Kathy, I said, looking her straight in the eye. How long have you been sleeping with Hanson? Her face paled, and all she could utter was, "What?" No more lies, I said firmly. I am aware that you have been tracking your menstrual cycle and have marked last night as the day in your planner. I am aware that Hanson instructed Benson to use a condom, and since I was not intimate with you, that leaves Hanson. He desired to impregnate you, didn't he? Kathy's tears began to fall, and she did not respond. It was not Benson who desired you to shave. It was Hanson, I said coldly. And you did it for him, despite my instructions not to. That demonstrates that he wields greater influence over you than I do. I allowed her to absorb my words. Last night, when I arrived home, I remained at the front door and observed you unclad in the living room. I witnessed Hanson caressing your back and kissing your stomach as a man kisses the belly of the woman carrying his child or about to carry it. Did you genuinely believe I was gullible enough to think it was mine? Or were you planning to abandon me all along? Kathy's sobs grew louder as I rose and exited the room. When I returned to the kitchen with my suitcase, she gazed at me in shock. No, please don't leave me, she cried, rushing towards me. I love you. I do not love Jack, he blackmailed me. I had no choice but to comply with his demands. Why? Didn't you simply continue taking your birth control pills and deceive Jack? I inquired bitterly. You had no qualms about deceiving me. I suppose I would believe anything you told that scoundrel over what you've told me recently? I added as I approached the door. Oh, by the way, I continued, last night when I was observing you with Hanson, I overheard you profess your love for him. So, where does that leave me? I do not love him. If I am pregnant, I will have an abortion, she pleaded. I love you. You must believe me. No, I do not, I said coldly. And as for the baby, do not terminate it for my sake. Kathy collapsed on the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. As I glanced back from the garage door, she appeared as she had the night before at the party, broken. I no longer harbored any affection for her, only revulsion. I despised leaving the home we had worked so diligently to construct, but it held no fond memories. Fortunately, we had not resided there long enough to establish any. It has been over 2 years since I abandoned Kathy. I discovered a furnished apartment after leaving and attempted to rebuild my life. That's when the nightmares started to plague me. I was dissatisfied with my work, so I resigned and relocated to California. I launched my own insurance investigation firm after establishing myself there. I contacted Bill Ripley and inquired if he was interested in collaborating with me. He joined 2 months later. Upon his arrival, Bill informed me that Mary Farrow, a mutual acquaintance, had learned of our business launch and inquired about potential employment opportunities. Mary relocated here 14 months ago, and 2 months later, we began dating. We moved in together 3 months later. I was taken aback by how quickly I was able to love again. I was in no rush to marry, but I enjoyed sharing my life with someone I cared about. I've kept tabs on people back in Indianapolis through contacts such as Special Agent Mark Walker. Kathy, it turns out, blew the whistle on the company's president and CEO at Jack Hanson's behest. Hanson hoped to have them dismissed for their unethical behavior so that he could take over as president of DCNH. Kathy was apparently not lying when she stated that she did not love him. She was exploiting him while being aware of his affection for her. She anticipated that if Hanson obtained what he desired, she would also receive what she desired. Hanson and his wife were childless, which he attributed to her. He made repeated attempts to impregnate Kathy for over a month after I left, but to no avail. He was infertile. His wife discovered the affair and divorced him a month later. For his actions at DCNH, Hanson was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. Bartlett also received jail time. He is now serving a 2-year sentence in a minimum security facility. Kathy was fired from DCNH. The company was restructured and eventually acquired by a larger consulting firm. The most recent information I have is that Kathy is teaching bookkeeping at a community college near Columbus, Ohio. I try not to think about her. The wounds are still too fresh to recall any pleasant experiences we had. I do not miss her, which is fortunate because Mary has more than compensated for the void Kathy left in my life. That is why I married her. I am now sitting here gazing down at Mary and contemplating whether to awaken her, not to tell her I had the nightmare again, but to express my love for her. Last night she said, "Whenever you decide you want a baby, simply inform me. However, ensure that you place your order early. Delivery takes 9 months," she added with a chuckle. I am contemplating placing that order tomorrow. Incidentally, in case you were curious, DCNH stands for Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe.